How's everybody doing?
Yeah. Good.
Part of my struggle today was figuring out what to wear. Because, you guys come in basketball shorts all week, and I come dressed like this, and now it's a complete flip-flop because it's Sunday afternoon. So, all right. Cute, nice, polite, faggot, gay, girl. These were some of the words written on my page, but not my Facebook page. My page in 1992 in junior high inside of a slam book, or as I heard recently they were called burn books. Does everybody know what this is? It's a book where someone at school takes their lunch money, stops at CVS, buys a perfectly good notebook, writes people's names in it, and then passes it around school so other people can make comments about that person, but not to their face. I wasn't so worried about this as the page next to mine, and that was John Harrington's. And his said, hot, sexy, popular. And I was in Mr. Johann's 8th grade algebra class, which I still haven't used, and I was wondering, not why people said things negatively about me, but why I wasn't hot, popular, or sexy. It was also a little weird to me, growing up in a progressive western suburb of Chicago, that kids were so stupid that they would write words that didn't mean anything to me in this slam book, like gay or girl. Because in the house I grew up, these were just demographics and not necessarily put-downs. So I came home and I told my mom about this, and what she said to me was, do not read the comments. And I was worried about what people thought of me, but she said, do not read the comments. So, it's 2010. James and I were leaving a party in Channelside by the Powerhouse Gym, so I guess the gay thing was right. We're leaving a party in Channelside. Does everybody know where this is? Channelside, we're leaving a party by Grand Central. And the truck was parked in Grand Central where you would park if you went to the Powerhouse Gym. And we were going up a ramp. It was a Saturday night. I had maybe 2 beers. James doesn't drink. And so we were going up to the truck. And it was a really well-lit ramp to get to the parking lot. And this guy comes around me like this and says, give me all your money. Are you kidding? Really? Really? And I think he was just as scared as I was because he left me and he went around James here and he said, give me all your money. And he had a gun. And it was covered in a bandana. So on that February night in 2010, leaving a party in Channelside and walking up the ramp by the parking garage at the Powerhouse Gym, we were victims of attempted robbery. Now, if you've ever been a victim of anything and you've had to deal with the court systems, it's true when you watch Law & Order. So people who don't want to deal with the cops because they don't want to get dragged into something, it's completely true. So immediately, this gets picked up by the media. And so this reporter comes from TBO, she calls from TBO, which is right here, and she wants to interview me about the attempted robbery. Now, it's been a while since I've taken a media class. And the first thing they teach you about media is you do not talk to the media. But I made that mistake. So this woman interviews me, and she asks me about the robbery. She asks me about the person who attempted the robbery. She asks me what happened. She asks me who I was with. She asks me what I do for a living. So I tell her all of these things honestly. I'm a professor at the University of Tampa. At the time I was 33. This is who I was with. This is how old he is. This is where I do, why I was there. It's for a party in the Channel District, etc. and so forth. All right. Got that part? So I get to work on, Wednesday, and one of my friends calls me or texts me immediately and says, have you seen your article in the TBO? And I said, no. So I dial it up, and it's sort of not written the way that I had been interviewed, so there's rule one with the media, right? But then I scrolled down and I read the comments. Now, if any of you have seen any of the comments that people write on news stories on CNN or any of the other media outlets, you know you're not supposed to do this, right? And so I scroll down and I read the comments. And the comments, there was nothing that I cared about in the article more than the comments. The comments said things like this. Liberal professor was probably trying to indoctrinate the assailant. He should have shot him. Or, he was probably too drunk to realize that he was in trouble. He should have been shot anyway. Or, racial slurs against the assailant. If I had had my gun on me, I would have shot that kid dead. Right below my name. So now, every time I Google myself, this story, up until about the last year, was on the first page of all the hits. Now it's about the third or fourth page, but it took 5 years for it to drop. But I should never have read the comments. So here I was, a liberal professor who was wasted that wanted to get shot in a parking garage downtown in Channelside. Sounds like a good idea. So in 2012, I came home from school, and I was excited because that day at work, I had been invited to blog for the Huffington Post. How many people are, these guys are seniors, right? Juniors? Do you remember the Republican convention here? Yes, we do. I came home from that debacle, and I got contacted by the Huffington Post, and they asked if I would blog for them, and I thought about this because that's sort of a big deal to write for the Huffington Post, and so I was really excited to have this invitation, but I wasn't sure about what it would do for my career, and I wasn't sure how it would look in my portfolio, and so I talked to James about it, and he said, you know, you can blog for the Huffington Post on one condition. What do you think that was?
Don't read the comments.
I am not allowed to read the comments. And it really kind of gets to you, because if any of you have read the Huffington Post, it says at the top, next to how many likes you've got, how many comments there are. And it's sort of like when you see the notifications on your Facebook app on your phone, and there's that little red 5 that's circled next to the application, and you need to check those notifications. It's the same way. And so it bugs me every time I see my article in print, and I'm like, I can't look down. I just can't read the comments. I thought this was an appropriate story because whether it's a slam book or a news story from TBO or the Huffington Post, why are we interested in what other people think of us? And I thought, knowing this group that's here today, and I know a lot of you guys, there's Dominic, Michaela, I see you guys and I know you and I know how you like to achieve and I know who you are and I know your personalities. I thought these people are somewhat like me. Because I wasn't concerned in that slam book about being called names. I was more concerned about why I wasn't being called hot, popular, and sexy. And I wasn't concerned so much as things being said to me about me in the TBO as I was about that they weren't being said correctly. And so it reminded me of this speaker I saw in junior high, actually, who came to an assembly. Do you guys remember assemblies? I loved assemblies, and that's probably why I'm here and I'm a teacher. But I loved assemblies. You got out of class, you got to hear somebody speak, etc. And this guy, he went down to the basketball court, and he had a whiteboard. And he wrote the words, red pencil. But he spelled it R-E-D-P-E-N-S-I-L. So he intentionally spelled it incorrectly. And of course, right away, somebody stands up in the audience and is like, hey, you spelled that wrong. Pencil spelled with a C. P-E-N-C-I-L. And of course, that's exactly what this guy wanted to happen. So he said, aha, that's right. I spelled 90% of this word correctly. Red pencil, there's 10 letters. I got 9 of them right. I got 1 letter wrong. And that's the letter you pointed out. And it's called the red pencil mentality, that no matter how right we get stuff, we always point out the one flaw. And so I thought about this talk today, and I thought, that fits so nicely because I'm the guy who's the red pencil mentality. I didn't care that there were being negative things said about me in this book. I was worried about how I could become more sexy, more popular, more hot, like John Harrington. I've looked him up on Facebook, by the way. Time passes. The same was true for the TBO, and the same was true for a lot of other things I did. And I thought, oh man, the kids at this talk are probably just like me, more worried about how we could get better and how we could succeed, as long as we don't fall into the red pencil mentality and never forget that we did 90% of these other things correctly. So I thought about these things, and it made me think about Brené Brown. And is anybody familiar with Brené Brown? Varying greatly. She is a vulnerability researcher out of the University of Houston in Texas. So her PhD is in work studying how we can become better leaders by being more vulnerable, which I thought was a really interesting concept. And she does this work called fighting shame and why you should work to fight shame out of your life. And I thought, man, Brené Brown talks about this in her book, the exact same thing about the red pencil mentality and reading comments. And so, to give you a quick backstory, she was asked to speak at TEDx in Houston. Are you guys familiar with TED Talks? Yeah. So the name might sound a little bit more familiar now. So she was asked to speak at TEDx in Houston about vulnerability and shame. She got over 1 million hits in like 3 months or something. So she got a lot of views of her TEDx. But one of the things that made me think about Brené Brown is that she writes about this comments ideal in her book. So I wanted to share that with you really quick. Okay. So what she's talking about here is that her work on shame and her TEDx has just gone viral. And she's a probably middle 40s PhD researcher at University of Houston, 2 kids, a husband, like not wanting to be super in the popular spotlight, not wanting to be super famous. And she instantly was shot into this spotlight in these speaking circuits. So this is what she wrote. Even to me, the issue of stay small, sweet, quiet, and modest sounds like an outdated problem she's talking about as a woman. But the truth is that women still run into these demands whenever we find and use our voices. When the TEDx Houston video went viral, I wanted to hide. I begged my husband, Steve, to hack into the TED website and, quote, bring the entire thing down. I fantasized about breaking into the offices where they were keeping the video and stealing it. I was desperate. That was when I realized that I had unconsciously worked throughout my career to keep my work small. I loved writing for my community of readers because preaching to the choir is easy and relatively safe. The quick and global spread of my work was exactly what I had always tried to avoid. I didn't want the exposure, and I was terrified of the mean-spirited criticism that's so rampant in internet culture. Which is true. We've seen this, right? Well, the mean-spiritedness happened, and the vast majority of it was directed to reinforcing those norms that we'd love to believe are outdated. When a news outlet shared the video on their site, a heated debate erupted in the comments section of their website about, of course, my weight. Quote, how could she talk about worthiness when she clearly needs to lose 15 pounds? Or, on another site, a debate grew about the appropriateness of mothers having breakdowns. In the beginning of the book, she talks about seeing a therapist. Quote, I feel sorry for her children. Good mothers don't fall apart. Another commenter wrote, quote, less research, more Botox. Quote. Something similar happened when I wrote an article on imperfection for CNN.com. To accompany the article, the editor used a photo I had taken of a good friend who had, I am enough, written across the top of her chest. It's a beautiful photo that I have hanging in my study as a reminder. Well, that fueled comments like, quote, she may believe that she's enough, but by the look of that chest, she could use some more. And, quote, if I looked like Brene Brown, I'd embrace imperfection too. Quote. I know that these examples are symptomatic of the cruelty culture that we live in today, and that everyone is fair game, but think about how and what they chose to attack. They went after my appearance and my mothering, which are two kill shots taken straight from the list of feminine norms. They didn't go after my intellect or my arguments. Those wouldn't have hurt at all. So Brene Brown is really awesome. If you get the chance, the book is called Daring Greatly, and it talks about vulnerability. It's a great airplane read. But I bring this up because her PhD research ties into the idea of what I brought to us today at lunch, and that is, do not read the comments. So whether it's a slam book in middle schoolers are mean, aren't they? Or it's a TBO reporter that got the facts wrong and then subsequently I read the comments, or blogging for the Huffington Post, or being a mother and an author. I urge you guys to do what I've been implored to do, and that is to not read the comments.